So you want to keep the house post-divorce. Let's talk about what that really means. If you're watching this, there's a very good chance you've said or quietly thought this sentence, I just want to keep the house. And I really want to just start by honoring that because I hear it every single day. About 95% of the people who come to me are moms, and almost all of them say some version of the same thing. I want to keep the house for the kids, for their stability, so they don't have to lose everything all at once. That instinct doesn't come from logic, it comes from love. It comes from protection, from trying to hold something steady while everything else feels like it's shifting underneath you. And I want you to hear this clearly right away. There's nothing wrong with wanting that. But today, I want to slow down this conversation because keeping the house is not just a yes or no decision, and it's definitely not just about the house. Before we go any further, I want to tell you who I am because context matters in a conversation like this. My name's Tami Wollensak. I'm a divorce mortgage specialist. I've spent over 30 years in the mortgage industry, and for many years now, my work has been almost exclusively focused on people going through divorce, specifically when the marital home is involved. This is not something I dabble in. This is the lane I stay in. I work alongside family law attorneys, mediators, divorce coaches, financial professionals, and my role is very specific. I help people understand how the housing decisions being discussed during divorce actually play out after the divorce is final, because what works on paper doesn't always work in real life. I've also been divorced myself, so I understand what it feels like to be making decisions when you're emotionally exhausted, scared of getting it wrong, and trying to protect your kids at the very same time. My job is not to tell you what you should do. My job is to slow the process down long enough so you can make better informed decisions instead of fear-based ones. One of the biggest misunderstandings I see in divorce is this idea that you're negotiating the house. You're not. You're negotiating the equity in the house, and separately, you're negotiating who's responsible for the debt or the mortgage. Those are two very different conversations. The house is the container, the equity is the asset, and the mortgage is the liability. And if we don't look at all three of these together, people often make decisions that feel emotionally comforting, but become financially exhausting later. So let's slow this down even more and walk you through how equity is actually calculated. Because once you understand this, a lot of fear tends to loosen its grip. Equity is the simple equation. The market value of the home minus everything that is owed on the home equals equity. Let's walk through an example. Let's say that the house is worth $500,000 and the first mortgage balance is $300,000. That means the total equity in the home is $200,000. Now, depending on state law and how the home was acquired, the equity is often considered marital. So if we assume a simple 50-50 split, each spouse's share would be $100,000. That $100,000 doesn't disappear just because one person wants to stay in the home. It has to be addressed. Let's talk about how the house value is determined, because this is another place where confusion and sometimes conflict shows up. The value of the house is not what Zillow says on a good day, what one spouse hopes it's worth, or what it's worth during a hot market years ago. Typically, value is determined by a professional appraisal, a broker price opinion, or sometimes called a current market analysis, an agreed upon value based on recent comparable sales. What matters most is that both parties agree on the value, or that a neutral person helps them determine it. Because even a $25,000 difference in value can dramatically change the equity and completely stall negotiations. Now, I want to add a very important layer to this, because this is where many people get caught off guard. If there is a second mortgage or a home equity line of credit, often called a HELOC, that balance also comes out of the equity. All loans secured by the home count. So let's go back to our example. The home is worth $500,000. The first mortgage is $300,000. That gives us $200,000 in equity. But now let's say there's also a HELOC with a balance of $50,000. Now the math is going to change. $500,000 minus $300,000 minus the $50,000 equals $150,000 in total equity. If that equity is split evenly, each person's share is now $75,000, not $100,000. This is often where emotions spike because HELOCs are easy to forget about or easy to minimize, but they absolutely matter. HELOCs are often used for renovations, credit card consolidation, college expenses, or simply surviving a tough financial season. Sometimes one spouse uses the funds more than the other. But in divorce, if that HELOC was taken out during the marriage and secured by the home, it's typically considered marital debt, regardless of who used it. And if both names are on that HELOC, both people remain legally responsible no matter what the divorce agreement says, which means part of keeping the house often includes paying off the HELOC, rolling it into a refinance, or otherwise removing the other spouse from the liability. Divorce is meant to untangle finances, not freeze them in place. This brings us to another critical nuance. Who stays on the debt matters. If someone remains on the mortgage or HELOC, they remain legally responsible for the debt. Late payments affect both credit profiles. Defaults affect both credit profiles. Future borrowing can be impacted for both people. This is why divorce agreements and mortgage reality don't always align. And it's why housing decisions made without understanding this can quietly limit both people's futures. So now let's come back to the heart of the issue. When moms tell me they want to keep the house, what they're really saying is this: I want my kids to feel safe. I don't want them to lose more than they already are. And that makes complete sense. But here's the question I always ask, with kindness and zero judgment. Does keeping the house truly create stability, or does it just create ongoing financial stress for you? Because stability isn't just about staying in the same place. Stability is a parent who can sleep at night, a budget that works without panic, an emergency fund that exists, a future that doesn't rely on everything going perfectly. Kids just feel change. They feel stress. And a parent who is constantly worried about money, even in the same house, is carrying a burden no one intended. I also want to say this clearly: selling the house is not a failure. It's not giving up. It's not failing your kids. It doesn't erase the life you built. Sometimes it's a strategy. Sometimes it's the cleanest way to divide equity, remove shared debt, and allow both people to reset financially. A smaller home, a rental for a season, a calmer nervous system. Children adapt far better to change than they do to chronic stress. Divorce is also not about who behaved better. The courts don't award houses based on behavior. Negotiations don't improve because one person suffered more. Divorce is a financial restructuring and a reinvention of a family. And when children are involved, you're not ending a relationship. You're redefining it as co-parents for the rest of your lives. The decisions you make now shape that future. My role in this process is not to push one outcome. My role is to help you understand how equity is calculated, how debt and liability really work, and what it truly takes to keep the house, and whether that decision supports your life after the divorce. Clarity creates choices, and informed choices create real stability. If this conversation is resonating, I want you to know you do not have to make this decision alone or figure this all out at once. I've created a free divorce housing clarity quiz for exactly this moment. It's not a test. There's no right or wrong answers. It's designed to help you start thinking about your options in a different way and to give you clarity on what the next step or the next steps might be for you. Sometimes clarity comes before decisions, and that's exactly what this is meant to do. You'll find the link below. If you want something more in depth, I've also created what I've called an ebook called Can I Keep the House? It walks you step by step through how equity works, what questions to ask, and what to consider before you make a decision you'll live with for years. It's something you could read quietly at your own pace without pressure. And if you're at the very beginning and you just need to talk things through, you can also schedule a free 15-minute consultation with me. Not to commit to anything, not to be sold to, just to help you get oriented and to start on the right path with clarity instead of fear. You don't need to rush, you don't need to prove anything, and you don't need to sacrifice your future to be a good parent. Good parents ask better questions. And there's a way forward that supports you and your children financially, emotionally, and long term. You're allowed to choose peace, you're allowed to choose sustainability, and you're allowed to change your mind once you have better information. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. If this video resonated with you, please hit the subscribe button, share it with somebody that you know, or give me a thumbs up. I'd sure appreciate it, and it'll help me make more videos like this. Thanks so much for watching. Make it a great day.